I am Nesmuva Sita, and as you can tell by the title of this lore breakdown video, it's going to have a few interesting revelations. I'm not joking around here. Previously on Leviathan, Rikoko and Nuncial, still posing as couriers, transported their cargo through the ring's corridor, being so convincing with their acts that the ring thug that was escorting them was convinced by it. They passed by the lab that was in the video that Lapis sent them, and observed an experiment in progress and an experiment that ended in failure. When they opened the container at the location where they were supposed to, they revealed a mass of flesh that attacked all those within that room with some kind of sound. Well, it was intense enough for those that didn't have protection for their ears, such as that ring thug and Nuncio. It gave both of them the same desire that the merman distortion had. Yes, the one that was mentioned at the start of the distortion detective. Although Nuncio was able to be snapped out of it, well, more so than the ring thug, they maintained their cover and told the docent that checked up on them that they'd clean up. Although Nuncio still hadn't been able to snap out of it completely. We then pick up where we left off, with Virgilius, the Red Gaze, and his rookie fixer Garnet. They were walking behind the man and his two female twin escorts, who took their seats before those two fixers did. The maester of the ring was talking to one of her underlings, but it wasn't clear what they were talking about. One of the docents were looking at the eyes in the walls, which appeared alive. And around these eyes were portraits around them of eyes and faces. This docent had a Mardi Gras Phantom of the Opera mask on, which we know is a contained distortion, a byproduct of the experiments going on that the ring was funding. And they're not pleasant ones. They smiled at one of the eyes, saying in a sadistic tone, "Nice view you've got there," before proceeding to stab it with a sword. Before sheathing it and glancing back, they found it amusing that the Red Gaze was among the bidders. So this one survived their fights that they had last time, and they were able to survive getting dragged by the mirror distortion, although with a few scratches. Virgilius had a sign with a 10 on it. Well, it was there as he sat down, and it was an auction. They need a way of identifying who was bidding on a particular item. The ponytailed female fixer under Virgilius's employ, who was communicating with them through some concealed means, was surprised that they let him in. Which isn't something that usually happens. Clearly they couldn't resist having a colour fixer in the audience. Garnet was nervous, as he saw that everyone else had veils over their heads and were bowing, saying, "Sir?" Which was a way of saying, "Sir, they're bowing. Should we do the same, so that we don't start something here? If we wanted to go all out, we'd be Lou affiliated." Virgilius assured him that they didn't have to bow down, as the ring would be honoured to see their works frayed by his gaze. Then the auction began proper, as the Maester of the Ring presented the first item, an urn that contained the hair from every villager from the now gone town within the nest of District 21. Okay, what happened there to result in the removal of that part of the nest? Probably something less severe than making an AI, but still pretty bad. As for where the town went, probably similar to what happened to the entirety of the nest of District 12 towards the end of Library Ruina, but on a much smaller scale. The opening bid was 30 million An, and the bid increment was 5 million. To put it into perspective, the Gaze office were paid 200 million An by the Kane office to investigate W Corp's singularity, which wasn't a small payment regardless, as Nemo, the operator of that office, spent the same amount of money in one day that a typical Backstreets resident spends an entire year. As the bidding started for this item, a veiled bidder with a sign that had an 8 on it bid for 35 million. Then there was a 40 million bid by 2. And just as it was going once, going twice, 15 bid for 45 million. Virgilius then watched as someone bid for 50 million, which was the final bid. The Maester praised the one that had the highest bid. Yeah, you would do that. Praising someone that was supporting organised crime. Then she had to move on to the second item, which was performance art. A see-through cage, which it looked like it was made of something that looked like glass, but it was much stronger than that. This cage contained the elegant Mr. Strode, who had been dancing for 3 years now. This was likely using T-Corp Singularity. Wait, so that's 3 years inside. Well, that's 3 years on the outside, but on the inside that would be, let's see, oh yes, wait, 4 months, 2 weeks, 1 day, 2 hours, 46 minutes and 39 seconds? How would that work? Unless they stopped time completely or made sure that food and drink was slotted in there occasionally to make sure that he didn't die of dehydration or starvation. Not to mention clean clothes and the need to go to the bathroom. Well, regardless of the challenges of singularity-based time dilation, the opening bid for this luxury worth giving glances when you bore is 50 million An. As for that man that Virgilius met, with his twin sister escorts, he noticed that he wasn't even remotely interested in the items that were being bidded for. Like him, He's after something specific, for a particular reason. In the end, that second item had a bid for 70 million arn from bidder 7. They then reached the final item of the day, the Maester's favourites, that she expects to sell the highest. She's overjoyed to present that piece to them. She then gave the backstory of it. An infamous syndicate, which was known for its brutal reign, was wiped out in a single battle. All of its members, including its leader, were annihilated in that instance. The painting that was revealed at that point, which he was looking at earlier, immortalized that carnage. Carnage that Virgilius knew all too well, as he was there. We then flashed back to, well, it was like the long before even the Seed of Light project in Lobotomy Corporation was started. Perhaps even sooner. Well, it was at the point when that carnage took place. Blood was spilling all over the floor and the walls as the bodies slumped lifeless one by one, which included the cracking of tiles within the toilets where they were being slaughtered. Then one of them begged him for mercy, as their kid was waiting for them at home. Virgilius was showing none to this boss of the syndicate. And then he brought his short sword to bear around this boss's neck. They said a name which was familiar. Lapis. Just before he slit their throats. There was only one that survived. One that bore a strange resemblance to Garnet. Virgilius asked that one what the code was. They said that it was Lapis, the name of the boss's daughter. Wait, the one that he just killed. For that, he decided to leave this one to die from the cuts that he was about to leave on them. They'll live for a few hours with that, telling them to consider it his thanks for telling him the code. He then decided to use the bathroom while he was there. Before he left, as the last fixer of that syndicate was slowly dying. Oh. I can tell what that implies, but I'll save that for the end. Yeah, first he was taking the then he was taking a we then snap back to the present, where the Maester went on to say that since that battle, their names and records have been expunged. Who they were, what they did, whether they deserved their fates, everything about that syndicate and its members forever remaining a mystery. The painting itself, painted from the consciousness of the sole survivor onto death, after the onslaught. The final item of the day, with an opening bid of 1 billion arn. Ooh, that's a lot considering how much the other two went for. The bids came quickly. 1.2 billion, 1.25 billion, 1.3 billion, then 1.4 billion. Then the spectacled man that had the twin sister escorts bid 10 billion, which shocks the other bidders, who was revealed to be Gubo from N-Core. As in that N-Core. The same one that had... Well, yes. The same one that had the taboo hunters. Certainly Vesper Crabro hunt down Moses, Ezra, and Uriah in the Distortion Detective for recording video footage in District 14. If you want to know how that went, check the Distortion Detective out. Now, this bid of 10 billion on even surprised the Maester, as Gubo had a determined look on his face. Garnet noted that he wanted to win that bid badly, asking Virgilius if he's there for the same thing as them. Virgilius suspects the same thing, as whoever wins the Maester's most cherished work gains access to the corridor that the ring possesses. Without needing to go in using a cover, he's determined to go there, no matter what. Just as the Maester of the Ring was about to wrap up the auction, seeing as there was no other bidders, Virgilius stood up, much to Garnet's fear. The docent told him that he ought to pay the full price in cash there and then. Virgilius said that he wouldn't, and just as the docent was asking if it was a joke, the Maester stopped them, seeing that he has something worth saying. That, and he has something more valuable. Virgilius went on to tell her that the painting was unfinished, a counterfeit produced only from someone's failing mind, asking her what if he could complete it, offering to show her the real deal if she was to take him to the lab. Now, this angered Gubo, who shouted the line that wouldn't be out of place in a Phoenix Wright game. And that line is, "Hold it!" As it's not in line with the rules. Only the group with the highest bid would be allowed into the corridor, break the rules, and as a consequence, her and her gallery would be put into ill repute. A major disgrace. Seriously? You're talking about ill repute and disgrace to a higher up of one of the 5 biggest organized crime syndicates in the city? As for the Wings, which you're a representative of, they're not much better. As feudal lords ruling over your private fiefdoms on behalf of the head. And there's a lot of moral bankruptcy there. And that's just based on learning about the inner workings of what used to be Elcor. The docent was scared, whispering to their superior that it's 10 billion on the line, asking if she wouldn't gazump him, or, to put it in simpler terms, not accept Virgilius' offer at the last minute. Then the Maester was thinking, rules and reputation. Had you not been just a little more cultured, you would have realized that such things are utterly worthless before this gaze. Yeah, the art world has an occupational hazard, and that's mental health issues. One notable example was a certain man of Dutch origin that suffered from depression and even cut off one of his ears. Yes, and that's probably one of the milder examples. So to expect rational thought from someone like a Maester of the Ring is like expecting the head to turn the city into a constitutional democracy, giving away all of their absolute power and not ruling by fear. Oh, who am I? The maester banged her hammer twice, telling the bidders that the decision was made, that the painting that was called the Red Gaze goes to the Red Gaze himself. Yes, clearly it's not about the money. Certainly not in this case. There are some interesting revelations in this one. Firstly, that Garnet and Lapis appear to have been children of those who were members of the syndicates, the latter being the daughter of the boss that was killed, along with the others within that syndicate by Virgilius. Damn. So the one that made the Red Gaze painting was one of Garnet's parents. How would he react if he knew that the one that he was working for, and likely put him in that orphanage that's now in ruins, was the reason why he was an orphan in the first place? Not just him, but Lapis and possibly all those other children that were orphaned by the Red Gaze. Also, what if he found out that his parents were syndicate thugs? Probably a bit better, but not by much, compared to how Lapis would take it if she found out that one of her parents was the boss of that particular syndicate. As for what finger this syndicate was likely affiliated with, we can rule out the index as you're either entirely with them or you're not. And even that's based on the prescripts. It's not the pinky, as this syndicate is afraid of pain, and they didn't seem to be big on mutilation. I'm basing this on Ryoshu's image on the Limbus Company website, which showed the different fingers and how they dress. It's not the middle, as if Tanya was at all typical by middle standards, and yes, it's confirmed she was part of that finger, they wouldn't beg for mercy if they were that big on survival of the fittest, as in social Darwinism. And they certainly weren't ring affiliated, as they didn't share their love of aesthetics. So the thumb is more likely to be the finger that this syndicate was a subsidiary of, as it seems more down to earth. Well, if you define that as strict adherence to protocol with severe punishments for breach of said protocol. Yeah, you're no disrespect. You disrespect, you'll sleep with the fishes, capiche? Also this Gubo from N-Corp. Now, what is N-Corp's interest in that corridor? Perhaps they see a possible singularity that they can appropriate? Did someone from the ring record video footage and he was sent there to cut their head off? Are people from District 14 being abducted by the ring for their experiments? Who knows? But it's clearly worth 10 billion ARN. It's not something that most would have on them. Well, as far as that lab is concerned, we know that Rikoko and Nunzial are already there, so Virgilius and Garnet will soon be joining. It's all coming together. Virgilius and Garnet, Nuncial and Rococo. But what about Denver? What is happening to her? Well, let's hope that's revealed at some point. Until next time, hail the rabbit!